because I needed a singer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I
Right.
wasn't singing back then. And I just kept saying like, I can't sing. I can't sing. Even though people I'd work with would be like, Kaerhart, you can sing. And I was like, no, it's not good enough. And that's because I was comparing myself to like Adele.
Sure. So this is a podcast about you and
Mhm.
your journey in music, but I'm so intrigued by numerology, and I really want to ask you about that if that's cool as well.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that tends to be how most interviews go with me these days.
Okay. Well, I interviewed somebody a while back, and he told me about numerology. I'm like, what is this? What are you talking about? He's like, oh, it's just blah blah blah. And so I Googled it, and then there's like this website that you can type in your name, and it'll like give you your numbers. And I don't know
Mhm.
if it's BS, like I don't really know. And then it's like reading all these things about me that were
Yeah.
like true. And I'm like, what is happening? But then I'm like, is this thing just like AIing through my like social media accounts and feeding it back to me? It was just bizarre.
It's so funny because, obviously I'm a numerologist and I have been a numerologist for a while. And the other night I was just sitting in my room and I'm like, numerology is so on point. Like, how is it so on point? And I started to kind of like, my mind went down this rabbit's hole of like, we must live in a simulation and numerology must be the code because that's the only way that it is just spot on for everyone all the time. I mean, I don't even know how many readings I've done at this point, thousands, honestly. Um, and it's always accurate. And I actually messaged my friend who's a famous mathematician. His name's Robert
Mhm.
Edward Grant. And we started talking about numerology. And, he's like very well educated, famous mathematician. And he's like, no, numerology is real. There's an equation that I found that proved Pythagorean numerology, which is what I studied and teach. And him and I need to get deeper into that and like bring that to the masses. But
Yeah.
and he is again like a mathematician. Like he's not like, necessarily he's a spiritual person, but it's not like he's a mystic coming from that. So to hear that from him was really cool because working with this tool, I know it's accurate, but you always kind of question yourself, like, am I
Right.
crazy? Right. Yeah. It's good to
Yeah.
be
And I'm like,
discerning.
and I was like, this is, I
Yeah.
honestly thought like they just, cause I had to provide my like email and my
Mm.
name and my last name. I think I don't know. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Do you use your middle name as well when you're
Yeah, you
figuring out the
use
number?
your full legal birth name, so like, the name you're born with, and then
Hmm.
your birthday. And there are a series of equations that kind of speak to everything. Like your life path, your challenges, your
Hmm.
struggles, like everything you're going through in each year cycle. Like it's really infinite what numerology tells you. And honestly, like I was not someone who even like grew up being into these sorts of things. Like I always kind of thought astrology was even bullshit.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until I had my first like numerology experience that I was like, whoa, how could this stranger know like the most obscure details about me just from my birthday and name? It's mind blowing when you really start diving into it. And it's been really cool to see the response people have had since I wrote my book.
Hmm.
As when Penguin Random House found me to write a book, my first response was, yes, I'll do it. But like,
Right.
who's going to read it? Because so many people don't know what numerology is. And I thought it's not mainstream, it's not popular. Who's going to care? But it
Hmm.
really has been catching on. And that's so cool to see.
Yeah, like I said, I'd never heard of it. This is literally like a few weeks, I mean, maybe a month or so ago. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, you do your name. And then sorry, it equates to some number and then this blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. So after the interview, I went on and I'm like, there's no way this is real. This has to be some AI going through all reading my email, my name and everything and just kind
Yeah.
of like figuring out little things about me. And like it was just so bizarre that and I saw that you did that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I really am so curious about all of
Yeah,
this.
and when we're not doing this, we can talk more about your numbers
Oh
and kind of
yeah,
and go
yeah, I
deeper
love
into
that.
that.
Let's do that.
But yeah, I know that's why the other night I was like, we live in a simulation. There's no other way to explain it because it still freaks me out as a
Sure.
numerologist. And like obviously I believe in it, right? And I view it as an incredible tool for us to tap into ourselves and to love ourselves, accept ourselves, to come into alignment with life. Like I was literally homeless and broke with no plans for my future, no prospects. And just by using numerology as a tool, like Penguin Random House found me to write a book. It became a bestseller in England. Like I'm a signed artist now. Like so many things happened just because I was like flowing with life instead of going against it, but also like embracing my numbers and being like, okay, there's no way if I'm a life path one and I'm meant to be a leader and like I'm meant to do something big in this world, there's no like I'm supposed to be doing these things instead of letting doubt hold me back,
Mm-hmm.
which is like been my life story, right? Like I'm
Sure.
not good enough, but like
Right.
studying my cosmic code, I was like, I am good enough. Yes, I'm going to go for it, you know?
That's so interesting. Well, I'm really excited to talk with you about that part. But let's get into your music. I love
Yeah.
the two songs you've released recently.
Thank
But
you.
before that, let's get into where were you born and raised? Tell me about where did you grow up?
So I was born in Long Beach, California, and we moved a lot. So I usually just say LA is where I grew up, but I actually
Okay.
like went to high school in Orange County, California,
Sure. I'm
like
from
the
San
TV
Diego, so
show.
I know all of the I know, and I don't know all of your story, but I know where you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah. So the OC is where I went to
Sure.
high school. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
hmm
Okay, so you grew up in. You said you moved around a bit, but you spent most of your time in Southern California. It sounds like.
Yeah, I was in SoCal for most of my life, and then I went to uni in New York City.
Okay.
So then I
And
kind of like have bounced around between New York and California.
okay, and are you in California now?
No, I'm in North
Oh.
Carolina right now because
Oh
my
wow.
parents came out here. They left LA. They wanted like more nature and more land. And then right before COVID hit, Penguin Random House found me to write the book. And I thought I was living in the East Village at the time. And I thought, okay, let me go stay at my parents and write my book in the forest. And I'll come back to New York and get my own spot. And then COVID hit. And I've been here for 2 years, but I will be in LA starting at the end of this month,
Okay.
actually.
Very
Mhm.
exciting. Yeah, we moved to during the COVID about a year ago yesterday. We moved to Nashville, to Tennessee. So
Oh, no way.
yeah, we
Okay.
love
Because
it
I've been
here.
thinking about going to Nashville.
Oh, it's the greatest place. I'm Southern again, a California kid. Grew up in San Diego. Lived there
Oh,
majority of my life, and then I lived in San Francisco for a handful of years for doing radio up there. Moved back to San Diego, but now my wife and two kids, we just moved to Middle Tennessee, and we love it here.
wow.
It's fantastic.
No, I've been trying to figure out where I want to go. And Nashville's definitely been one of those places because it's like a chiller vibe than LA, but
Hmm.
still music, because that's
Yeah,
really important, right?
I feel like it's even more music than LA, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, LA obviously, LA is a bigger entertainment. I mean, because they've got movies and TV and music and like kind of everything there. But Nashville is like music, very
Mm,
music forward. It's crazy. I mean, you get off the, I don't know if you've been here, but you get off
yeah.
on the in the airport and it's like there's people playing live music like in the airport. Like it was full COVID. We had like a mask and all this stuff on when we came here. People playing in the the little bars there. It's just it's amazing how ingrained music is here. It's yeah, like
Yeah.
half my neighbors are involved in the industry at some capacity. All the publishing companies are here, labels
Oh,
are
yeah.
here. Yeah, it's insane. So
Oh man. Yeah, I've been thinking about going there because I'm like, I want to like put roots down somewhere, and I don't know if LA is right for me, especially after growing up there. I'm kind of like, I want something different. So Nashville's definitely been on the list.
yeah, it's great. I can't say enough good things about it. We love it here. So
Oh, amazing. Well, thanks for the rec.
yes, of course. There's a lot of Californians here too. They're kind of getting irritated by us. So do keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Uh, but so okay, grew up basically in LA. So how
Mhm.
did you get into music? Do you have musical parents,
No,
siblings,
no.
anything?
But my parents, they're no one plays instruments in my family, but my parents have always been really obsessed with music.
Hmm.
Like I was listening to the Beatles when I was in the womb, basically. Like my mom loves the Beatles. And I asked to take piano lessons when I was like 4 or 5 years old. So I kind of started doing music that way. And then I always thought I could never do it professionally. And again, I didn't believe in myself. That was like my biggest crutch for most of my life is just like self-doubt. And
Hmm.
when I was in New York City, I met this girl and she really like believed in me and I'd been writing songs but not shown anyone. And she's like, let's be in a band. And then we were in a band, and that kind of opened my eyes to like, oh, I could actually do this. And then that kind of like led to, meeting people in the industry and being in songwriting sessions and like top lining sessions for other artists and things like that. Um, so yeah, that's been
Mhm.
kind of like a really short way of my
Sure.
journey.
Well, no, yeah, let's back up a bit. So you piano lessons obviously early on, and
Mhm.
then were you involved in like chorus, choir, anything like that, or you just it was all hobby?
No, no, no. I actually did not sing until a few years ago. I
Wow.
had a lot of resistance to singing. I was really scared to be seen. I just wanted to be like the guitar player with Mystique. And so in all these bands I was in, I was always writing the songs and playing instruments, but never singing. And then I went through a couple bad band breakups. And one of the bands I was in, we were signed to a label, and I thought that was my big break.
Wow.
And it really went to shit in like the most extreme way. The story's too long to tell on this podcast, but it was devastating for me. And at that moment I thought, you know what? I have to start singing my own songs, because I know that like I'm not going to bail on myself. But when
Hmm.
you attach yourself in bands to someone else, then you're giving kind of your power away in a
Right.
way, right?
Everyone's got a you have like a democratic vote, kind
Yeah.
of, so to speak.
Yeah, so I started teaching myself how to sing. And, it's been a process over the past couple years.
Hmm. Well, you did a very good job at self-taught. How good you are at singing.
Thank you. Well, I
Um,
think I just have a lot of like I'm really good at letting my emotions come through with my voice.
mhm.
So I think that's maybe, lifts it up a little bit.
Sure. Well, you talked about playing numerous instruments. Like, what was the first, aside from piano, would you
Yeah.
play? Guitar, or was the next instrument
Yeah,
you
well, I
learned?
played piano, and then I picked up guitar in high school, because I was like, all the
Okay.
music I was listening to was all guitar driven, right?
Hmm.
Like there weren't a lot of people like growing up that were like piano players or like a lot of piano based music. I feel like it was very guitar. And like, I remember like Since You've Been Gone by Kelly Clarkson came out when I was a kid, and like I loved
Okay.
that. And I had an emo stage listening to like Dashboard Confessionals and things like that. So I picked up guitar, and like I've been able to like fake instruments. Like I can fake bass, I can fake ukulele, like anything with like strings. Like I played
Strings. Sure.
violin when I was a kid.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So, did you go to New York for music, or are you pursuing something completely different?
No, I really wanted to study music, but again, I didn't believe in myself. And my Opa was, he was paying for my college, and he was like, I'm not paying for college if you're studying music. But then the irony of it is that I moved to New York, and I wound up doing music because I was
Right.
in the scene and like meeting all these people. So I was like going to classes, and then at night I was, going to Quad Studios and going to Rockwood Music Hall and all those spots.
Okay. Okay. Wait, so you said you were always writing, or you were writing music
Mhm.
before showing anyone, and you did
Yeah.
that in college. Like, what gave you the courage to be like, here, I'm going to show this person in this song I wrote? And if you weren't singing,
Mm.
how did you present the song?
Oh, okay. So because I'm like a classically trained piano player, I would write a lot of like classical sounding piano parts, or just kind of like even pop chord progressions and melodies and things. And I met this girl. Well, I used to work in like fashion PR, and I was interning there, and I met her, and she's like, I'm a singer. And I'm like, cool, I play guitar and piano. And I sent her like a voice memo of me playing piano, and she sent it back with her voice on it. And I was like, oh my God. And I just was instantly like obsessed. I'm like, oh my God, it's a full song, because I was too scared to sing before. So I had all of this work I had been doing. And, like as a kid, I wanted to be like Hans Zimmer, and
Oh, okay.
be able to like be a make.
Composer, like,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. I
Okay.
wanted to do that because I wasn't singing, even though I was always writing. So it's funny looking back. But yeah, she really encouraged that in me. And then we were in a band.
Oh, okay. And was that the band that ended up getting signed? And
No,
oh,
this
okay.
was I've been in so many bands at this point.
Okay. So you're in this band, and you're still going to school, or you had graduated at this point?
Yeah, I was still at uni, and I was in this band, and she one day just like moved away when we were in the middle of finishing an EP, and we had signed to a producer like agreement.
Hmm.
Um, and so she kind of left me in New York, and I was there finishing the songs on my own, it ended up not working out. Obviously, a band kind of
Sure.
has to be in the same place. I mean,
Hmm.
maybe not now because everything's moved online, but yeah.
Yeah. Right, right. But from that band, you ended up, you said you've been in a handful of bands. So from
Oh
there, you just
yeah.
kind of, were you
Bounced
pursuing
around.
yeah, were you trying to do that? Was that your goal, was to be like in a band
Yes.
or be a musician? Okay.
Totally. My dream since I was a little girl was to be a musician, like a professional musician and do music full time. And I was in so many bands kind of trying to like make something work because I needed a singer, right?
Hmm.
Because I
Right.
wasn't singing back then. And I just kept saying, like, I can't sing. I can't sing. Even though people I'd work with would be like, Kaerhart, you can sing. And I was like, no, it's not good enough. And that's because I was comparing myself to like Adele, right? I was like, I
Right.
don't sound like Adele, so I'm not good.
No one does.
But it's like, I remember having this epiphany where I was like, look, if Neil Young and Bob Dylan can sing, and I
Mhm.
love their music, then anybody can sing because it really is just about like you having a unique voice. And even though I'm not like a diva singer like Christina Aguilera or Adele or Mariah Carey, who I have so much respect for, like, I make it do what it do for me,
Mhm.
right? So
Sure.
it's important to like when I had that realization, it was a lot easier to sing.
Okay. And you were in these bands, and then okay, so then how do you like, how do you become a writer, and how does this whole numerology thing, or where does that kind of fall in line in your story? Like,
Oh my God. The numerology thing was a complete, I can't even tell you how surprised I am by it because it wasn't planned at all. So
okay.
I was living in LA at the time. And, if you go on my Spotify, you'll hear like more like EDM type songs. So I was making
Right.
like more electronic dance music type of tracks back then. And
So real quick, so you graduated from college in New York and then ended up moving back to LA to
yeah.
continue pursuing your career in music?
Yeah, well, I was in New York and I was trying to make it work, but it was so expensive. And a
Hmm.
lot of the industry had migrated from New York to LA at the time. And I thought, you know, okay, my parents live in LA. I can go crash with them, keep pursuing my artist project. That's when I started to sing.
Okay.
Um, and then, I wasn't producing at the time. So that's why a lot of my songs were more electronic. And also
Hmm.
like I was in a lot of sessions with a lot of producers who were like, oh, like you're an attractive girl and like electronic dance music is big right now and you got to do this and you got to be that. And I just trusted them because I'm like, well, they're way better producers than me and they're way more successful than me. So like I'll just do what they say. Right. So and I love the songs that I made. I mean, I still wrote all those songs, but it was definitely a different sound. But yeah, so I was there and I was making like electronic dance music randomly one night. I had a dream where someone came to me and said, follow the numbers. And I didn't know what that meant, but it was like one of those dreams that was like woke me up and I became like obsessed with like what numbers, and I, long story short, discovered numerology, found this woman who came from a long lineage of mystics in India, she was a numerologist. She gave me a reading, changed my life. I became obsessed with numerology. And so it was like my passion. It was like my hobby outside of music and everything else I was doing. And after like obsessively like studying charts and doing it for everyone that I met and like doing it all the time, someone randomly offered to pay me. And I just could not believe someone was going to pay me for a reading because I'm like, I was already doing this. Like I would have done it for free in my mind. I didn't think that was like a
Right.
career potential. Like and this was a while ago, so this was like before astrology was trending, before like spirituality was trending. And she became my first client, and then from there I built this whole business from referrals, which was great because I
Wow.
was like, finally, with music it can be up and down with
Hmm.
finances, but
Sure.
finally I had a consistent income, which definitely helped build my self-esteem too and helped me like go for it more as an artist. And then after like a solid like year and a half, 2 years of like just clients, like Penguin Random House found me to write a book. And I was like, because they had heard of me, like one of my clients told someone, it was like one of these crazy divine things. And
Mhm.
then it kind of just kept growing from there. But it was funny because like I never tried to do anything.
Right. It just sounds like you were interested in it, and then you were sharing
Yeah.
your interest with other people that ended up being like, oh, like, she really knows what she's doing. You should go talk to her. And then
Hmm.
I mean, Penguin Random House is like one of the biggest publishing companies there are. Like anyone, a majority of like the very massive books that are out, or especially like that are written by either big authors or even like a lot of celebrities, books are all out on Penguin Random House.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm again like was so surprised when I got
Right.
the email. And but because I think I was so surprised and it wasn't something that I was like, you know what, like sometimes when we hold tightly to something, we're like, oh my God, I need this, I need this, I need this. It's almost like you fuck up the frequency. And I
Hmm.
was just so like, oh, wow, that would be cool. But it wasn't a goal of mine. So I think it just like flowed so easily. But again, like even the book coming out, like I didn't think anybody would read it. I didn't, I just thought, okay, I'll put out a book. And I was so surprised by the response, but obviously really happy because I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not just some crazy chick obsessed with numbers. This is a real thing that really helps people. And it's not just me.
Right. And that's the thing is it's weird because it really is kind of like not quite on the mainstream yet because
Yeah.
and the fact that people found your book and in that market, like we're super stoked that it's there. And obviously, because
Mhm.
like for me, I didn't even know what it was until like less than like a month ago.
Yeah.
And then like I hear
Yeah.
about it, I'm like, wow, this is the most fascinating thing ever. And then I'm
Yeah.
automatically Googling, like literally after the interview, I'm like, what is this? And then it all made too much sense and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just too much for me right now, but like yeah, it's yeah, it's pretty what a world. I mean,
Well, if
that's
you think
nuts.
about it, like our entire world is run on math. Everything that
Right.
like even like this phone is, composed of like coding, a series of like zeros and ones. Like
Mhm.
everything can be measured through mathematical equations. Like time and space is measured with math. Like even music is frequency that's represented by numbers, right? And even like how you make up a chord, like 1, 3, 5, right?
Right.
So it's like everything runs on math. And there's something like so simple about numerology where it's just like black or white, like just it's so direct where I think a lot of people have a hard time kind of like, I feel like people have an easier time getting on board with numerology because they're familiar with math and numbers than something like astrology, right?
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah, because
Yeah.
astrology is more like, oh, you're this sign, and then well, it's like, well, who decided that? And then it's
Yeah.
like it comes down to like this. But with numbers, it's like this is the number.
Yeah.
I've just thought of this right now. I'm just very curious when it comes to like right? You kind of. I mean, I don't know how it works. Like, could I tell you my name and you'd know what numbers it is? Like, you could do the math like in your head and be like, okay, this is what you'd be this or whatever.
I can do that with the birthday, but with the name, every single letter in your name is represented by a number and you have to add it up a specific way.
Okay,
So I always needed to put pen to paper and even
but
like, mhm.
sorry, go ahead.
Even when I'm like calculating out things, like I can do math really fast in my head, but I still will always like triple check my work just in case. I'm also
Right.
like very like thorough and detail oriented. So yeah.
I guess my question is, so you know the pattern or you know how it would all add up.
Mhm.
So therefore, like if I knew all of that and I knew my wife was going to have a baby, could I essentially figure out the bet, like choose a name that would that I guess it wouldn't really work because there's still the birthday factor unless you are
No, no,
like,
no,
I'm
no.
going to have a C-section on this day and I'm going
Oh,
to name
I
them
help people with
this.
that.
Oh,
I've
you
helped
do?
people
Okay.
determine the days
That's
that they're getting a
fascinating.
C-section or, well, and some birthdays have karmic debt attached to them. So there's
Huh.
all kinds of different numbers that are attached to birthdays. And so, and I've had so many clients that I do see how this plays out. But, in India, um, numerology is not considered spiritual. It's
Okay.
considered very matter of fact. It's like, oh, yeah, numerology. Like, here there's more of
Interesting.
like, oh, numerology, that's kind of weird, it's a woo woo, but not in
Right.
India. And in
Okay.
India it's like just common, like not knowledge where everyone knows how to do it, but everyone's familiar with it. And there they believe in like changing names for better luck, and you can go online and like search stories like this, and there are so many stories. And I know people who have changed their names and had better luck, where someone had horrible luck in love, went to a numerologist, they said, you need this number, they changed their name, boom, met the love of their life. And even with me,
Wow.
the woman who first taught me numerology, who I mentioned earlier, she told me I would not find success unless I used a name that was a 3, So my life path's a 1.
Okay.
And I always went by Kaerhart. So I just got used to everyone calling me by my last name. I didn't know what to call myself as an artist, so Kaerhart, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when my book came out, Penguin Random House was like, do you want to use Kaerhart as your author name? And it just seemed so pretentious to be like, I'm Kaerhart writing a book. I just like, okay, I should go by my full name. Now, my name's Caitlin Kaerhart.
Mm-hmm.
I have a middle name, which I'm not using, but Caitlin Kaerhart without my middle name is a 3.
Oh, okay.
And my book became a bestseller in England. I had all this success around my book. Everything started happening once I put out my book with my
Just
name,
your first
which
and
is
last name.
crazy because for years I was like, oh, whatever. Like, I don't need to have a 3 name. I'll find success no matter what. But it's really interesting that I did that. And then again, the book just boom. Like I was on like the biggest morning show in England talking about it. Like,
That's so
and
fascinating.
they found me, my publishers. I was like, how did you guys get this? And they're like, literally, they reached out to us to have you on. Like, and I just changed my name. And so it does impact things because, we're energy, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
the numbers that make us up, like our cosmic code, it's emanating a frequency, same as music. It's all frequency, it's all vibrations. And so when you're using a certain name, that's the frequency you're projecting out into someone. And that is how they're perceiving you, right? That's how their energy is taking you in. So when you shift that, and you can play around with this, like I've played around with it. I've helped so many clients like figure out their names. It's fascinating to see how different vibrations completely can change the game for you.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So it does work that way. You can essentially help yourself by putting a name or giving yourself a name that would equate to whatever, a 3 or a 1 or
Mhm.
whatever you want it to do.
Mhm.
That's really, really fascinating too. Yeah. I just thought about, I'm like, I wish I would have known this. Then I could have given my kid this name and then he would have been at this number. But then like, I haven't even done it with him because I can't really figure it out myself, but
Well,
it's just,
numerology does believe that the reason why we use your full name at birth is that numerology believes in like souls and soul contracts and reincarnation, and that your child and you had like an agreement that he or she was going to come through and have that name and have
oh,
that birthday in order to um, have those experiences associated with that journey. But I will say, like, I've helped, I mean, a lot of my readings have centered around people who are planning to have a child and like what name
mhm.
should they have and when should we have our C-section. Like I've done a lot of that work with people as well. So it's
Wow.
almost like hacking the system in a
Right.
way. But
Right.
it's
That's
like,
so,
I would do that, like I would want my kid to have like the easiest, most fulfilling life. Like I
right. That's
wouldn't
what I
want my
would
kid to
think.
have the hard
Yeah.
path,
So if you had a kid, you'd be like, okay, let me figure this out to the minute so I could get it like the perfect number sequence
Yes.
here.
Yes. And even like I help a lot of people with their company names too. So,
Oh,
like if you're launching a podcast or a company, it's like, what do you want to attract, right? Like if you want to attract money, then it should be an 8. Like you wouldn't want to necessarily like launch a company and have it be, well, depending on what you're doing. I don't want to speak to, but there's certain numbers you don't want to have depending
okay.
on the company that
You're
you're
like this
launching.
number, and then I'm like doing the math on my own name podcast. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, well, there's a failure.
No,
Just kidding.
but I always think about that. It's so
Yeah.
important. And again, like I've just seen it too many times. And I'm sure you have, like, let's take numerology out of it. How many artists have you seen that have come out with a project and the project did not do well? And then they decide to change their name
Mhm.
and change the sound just a little bit, and suddenly success happens.
Yeah, countless times,
Yeah.
or
I don't,
leave
yeah.
leave a band and then, or change the name of the band because we got this member and then we had a hit or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Like Maroon 5 was what, like Kara's Flowers?
Something, yeah, they had some
Yeah.
other name first.
And
I can't remember
yeah,
off the top
yeah.
of my head.
And then they went to Maroon 5. It's like those things matter. They do.
Hmm.
I hate to be like that, but I've just been doing this work for so long. And, I know that there are a lot of people who might be listening to this and are skeptical, but it's like, try it. Try it for yourself if it resonates. And you'll start to see like shifts. And I mean, it's really cool. It's really fun.
Yeah, it really, I mean, it's so fascinating. The whole thing just blew my mind when I first did it. But Back to you and your music here. So
Mhm.
you're doing the EDM kind of top line, writing your own stuff there.
Mhm.
And how do you then decide, okay, this is cool, but I want to really just focus on my own project. I want to put out my own songs. When did that happen?
Well, I was putting out songs as an artist back then, but back then I was like very like I held myself back a lot. Like I didn't believe in myself fully and I kept thinking like, I was like if the song's not a hit, I can't put it out. It was like all these weird barriers I had for
Hmm.
myself, which is very bizarre. What ended up happening was I hit a major rock bottom. Major, okay? Like really, really bad. And that's when I, became homeless and like broke, had nothing. Um, and I just had to like stop everything and heal. And during that time, I obviously wasn't putting out music. I was just
Hmm.
trying to figure myself out. And I started working with this girl in a band. And I ended up like, we were collaborating and working with her actually like really empowered me to believe in myself more because with her I had to take on a much bigger role than I had with people before because the people I was working with in LA, they were much more successful, they had more cuts, they'd been doing it longer, but the girl I was working with in Brooklyn at the time, like she wasn't really a songwriter, like she didn't play instruments, so I had to take on a bigger role instead of like relying on someone, and we produced a project together which is actually coming out soon. And one of the guys from Bob Moses, his name's Jimmy Valance,
Oh
did some
yeah.
additional production on it. Yeah, yeah,
Really?
Jimmy.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. I'm interviewing him, I think next week,
oh
or
my God, no
both the guys in
way.
Bob Moses. Yeah. I've met
Yeah.
them a handful of times before, but yeah, that's funny. Or
Yeah. So I
cool.
was working with Jimmy's girlfriend and then I was staying at Jimmy's for a bit. And so her and I really, really grew in that project. Like I became a better producer because she was a producer but I was like the song, like we
Oh,
both really
okay.
grew and learned from each other.
Hmm.
And she became a like really good songwriter and singer, and I became, a better producer. And then, COVID happened and we separated. And I just was like, I just got to do it. I just got to produce myself. And I needed to prove to myself I could do it
Hmm.
because I had always been collaborating with other people. And I was like, I feel like I can. And so I started producing myself. And, I don't know how to do like cool electronic programming. I'm just not good at it, but I know how to play instruments. So I was like, let me just start there. And that's why like my new sound as a solo artist is stripped down. That's why it's mostly like acoustic and because everything was written that way. And that was like where I knew I could shine because I know how to do it, right?
Sure.
Mhm.
Okay. So yes, because you've put out what Sunlight and Voices are the newest ones that you released this
Mhm.
year, right? And is that going to be part of a project?
Yeah, so I also put out Heart of Stone a couple months ago too.
Okay.
And then I have another single coming out called Tower. I don't know if Joe showed that to you.
No, I
And
don't have
then
that one yet.
oh yeah, I'm really excited about that one. And then again, this
Okay.
band collaboration with this other female producer, Zoja, and then of course Jimmy did some production on it too. So at the moment, I'm kind of just releasing singles.
Hmm.
I think eventually I'm gonna do like a body of work, but because I've gone so many years without being consistent with releases, it just was like, let's just go for it. Let's just do it. Every 6 weeks, just put out a song. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Okay. Well, tell me about the most recent ones. What's Voices about?
So Voices came out of that really bad rock bottom that I
Hmm.
had. And part of the rock bottom was a breakup. And it was a really challenging breakup for me, not necessarily because of like a romantic place, but because the relationship was so toxic and we had a company together. So I felt
Mm.
like I couldn't leave because like my finances were tied and all these things, and we lived together. It was a whole mess coming out of that. And I started writing that around that time and then afterwards, and just kind of looking back on like how we tend to get in our own way and we tend to get in our own heads about things and like ruminating over like all the fights that we had and how like there were so many opportunities where we could have chosen to like be more positive or more loving towards one another, but we ended up letting like these more negative voices in our head kind of guide us and like again going into this shadowy part of ourselves, which happens in lots of relationships, and just kind of exploring like as human beings, we have thousands and thousands of thoughts a day, and most of those are scientifically proven to be negative. And it's about
Oh,
like,
wow.
yeah, and you can look up studies that have been done on that. And it's like, it makes sense, like
Right.
given, yeah.
Totally
But,
makes sense. I mean, but yeah, go
but it's
ahead.
about like being able to like choose to like empower yourself towards the positive thoughts versus the negative.
Mhm.
And again, just looking back, like we could have been something, right? But we got in our own head. And I'm sure like you've probably been through that with an ex or even
Mhm.
like whoever. It's like you look back, you're like, why was I like that? Like, why did I say those things? Why were they saying, it's very, yeah. So it's a very introspective kind of breakup song for me.
Okay. And then you ended up putting out Sunlight was the most recent one, or Voices is the most recent
They came out on the same day. So I
one?
released
Okay.
2 songs on 2/22/22.
Oh, was that a numerology thing?
Exactly. Yes. And, Sunlight's 1 minute 11, and then
Mhm.
Voices is 3 minutes 33 seconds. So it's very intentional.
Oh, I didn't
I
even
had,
think that I didn't figure that out.
well, I had to let people know I'm a numerologist.
Yeah. Well, they screwed up on Spotify for Sunlight. Just gonna say.
Oh,
They put it a
did.
minute. They put it a minute and 12 seconds.
Really?
Yeah, you got to call them.
Oh man. Okay. Well, on YouTube, the video says 111. They're fucking with my vibe,
They
man.
are. They are. You need to go. Someone needs to get on the phone from Spotify and you need to let them know. They need to chop at least. Maybe it was like a few, like, I don't know what would be in music, but like if it was video, like a few frames too far that it like
Yeah.
it had to click over to 12. But yeah.
Well, the
But
intention was there, and that's what matters.
exactly. That's all that really matters. If
Yeah.
the YouTube video's got it, that's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where like most people I feel like are listening to it on YouTube because the music video for Sunlight is so beautiful because we shot it at this like epic waterfall in Asheville, North Carolina, called Looking Glass Falls. And yeah, it's been doing better than Voices in a way, just with like numbers. And I think again, it's because it has that video piece that
Mhm.
really helps tie it in to like this is what the song is, right?
Sure. Yeah. Do you have a video with the next one coming out?
Yeah, so I'm shooting videos for every single I'm putting out this year.
Awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah,
What about
I'm going
live?
all in.
Yeah. What about playing out or anything? Is that something you're interested in doing, or basically sticking with writing songs, putting them out, and kind of going that
Yeah,
route?
it's funny because like with COVID, like I just completely forgot about even playing live. Like it
Right. I
has
mean,
not been a thought on in my mind at all.
well, the artist said it has been a thought on, it's still like up and down and up and down. Like it's like, here's
Yeah.
I think we're gonna be doing this, but then yeah, you never know, right? I mean, it's one of
Yeah,
those
no, I
things.
mean, I would love to. I also think that like it was really important to me that I put out like enough songs that then when I would like go play them out, people would be able to be like, "Oh, okay, cool." Like I want to have like a set's worth,
Sure.
right?
That makes sense.
So
Totally.
that's
Yeah.
been really important to me. But I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna be in LA for a bit and anything could happen. I'm
Hmm.
open.
Very cool. And then are you still doing the numerology as far as like readings for people? I'm sure it's got to be something you're
Yeah,
continuing with.
I had to stop doing one-on-one readings. It was a lot and it was, hard to balance both, but I have coaching clients that I do that are like more intense, but I've been working on numerology courses.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I'm putting out some courses and I put out like a numerology year cycle planner, like another book. I'm working on my second book. So there's still a lot happening with numerology. Oh,
Hmm.
actually, I'm launching numerology reports. So you're going to be able to like go onto my website, my Instagram and just like put in your info and then you'll get all your numbers.
Oh, wow. That's rad.
Yeah,
Okay. That's
exactly, which
awesome.
I'm really excited about because I talk about numerology a lot on my Instagram,
Hmm.
but some people kind of like don't want to do the math or they're kind of like, did I do it right? And so it'll be nice to have that piece.
Just
But
spit
yeah.
it out for them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm recording a podcast. I'm going to be in Miami in 2 weeks to do that and it's kind of like Sex in the City meets astrology numerology.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's a lot in the works. I
I
have like 2 careers going right now,
love
but
it. Yeah.
somehow they always kind of like feed into each other.
Hmm.
It's really interesting because, like people in music will be like, "Oh, it's really cool that you do numerology," and they'll want to talk to me or they'll want to get readings. And suddenly, it shifts that way. Or people who find me through numerology or through my book or whatever, they end up like really being into the music. So it's really like there is a weird
Hand
synastry
in
because
hand. Yeah, sure.
yeah, I don't know what it's working, I think.
Yeah, no, totally. Well, this has been awesome, like so fascinating. I love all the numerology stuff. Obviously, the records are awesome as
Yeah,
well.
thank
And
you
I
for saying
really,
that.
really appreciate your time today. This has been awesome.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's so cool to like talk about music, and just like
Mhm.
have that be kind of the primary focus, but still be able to like chat numerology. And it's
Yeah, I'm
cool that
just
you're
so
into it.
interested. Yeah. Well, I have one more question for you. I
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Hmm. Okay. Advice for aspiring artists. I'm trying to think of something that wouldn't be cliched. I think, a lot of artists that I know, and especially like myself included, like we get really caught up in how, like we have our dream and we're like, but how is it going to happen? And how are we going to get there? And I think you just have to take it one step at a time and just keep putting yourself out there even though it's scary, and like the fear is never going to go away. Like I still get scared to do things even though I've had success in certain areas. And it's like the more that you show up for yourself and you get comfortable in that kind of zone of just like going past your comfort zone, the easier it gets, the more you'll like empower yourself to keep going. I heard a quote recently which was it was something along the lines of like some guy who had run a marathon was like, I didn't run, a marathon. I ran 26 miles. I ran 1 mile 26 times is what he said. And
Mm.
it's like, you kind of got to think that, because I think a lot of people get shut down when they think about like, oh, I just want to be on stage headlining Coachella.
Right.
And then you're like, well, how am I going to get there though? And then all of a sudden you don't put yourself out there, as opposed to like, let me just put one song out and see what
Mhm.
happens. And then next month I'll do it again,
Bringing it backward.